I think we'll be quite curious to hear how the CFC actually works behind the scenes. So how the CFC leaders and staff work together to solve issues, and especially when it comes to crises. And if I could perhaps have these questions asked to General Lim Ho-young first, and then General Brooks, if you could answer afterwards, that would be great. So General Lim Ho-young, please.
예, 이야기를 시간에 맞춰서 짧게 하라는 그런
I was told that I need to make my remark rather short, so I will just talk about the main point. From the foundation of a CFC, so the number of soldiers were the same for the Korean military and US military. And during the peacetime, they have different military purpose and strategy, and because of the culture, those things are different. So we had to have people who can understand both cultures and strategies and approaches, and so that we have this combined exercise, and we would have this type of exercise, although it's a little bit different now. We used to have a spring and fall, but we had more number of combined exercise. So through this combined exercise, we raised our capabilities. But during the crisis, then the officers would have pre-designated strategies and operations so that they will be following those, especially CFC is because the same number of officers work for from the US and Korea side. So if there's a crisis, we are always having meetings with the CFC and JFC. It's not easy to have that meeting all the time. So Korean officers, they work with the upper organizations, Blue House or the MND, and then they relay the messages to the US officers so that they exchange information and ideas. So they come up with the best optimal method. And in order to do that, so both countries will have to work and they have to have a mutual understanding. But the plan and the strategy is the CFC. So then all these things will be reported to the commanders, and the commanders will work with the Korean government and the Blue House, and they come up with the best possible plan so that during the crisis, they will fulfill their responsibilities. My explanation was fairly short. So if you have any questions or if you want me to elaborate on something, please let me know.
Thank you, sir. And if we can pass on to comments from General Brooks, sir. Thank you.
Yes, certainly. Adding on to General Lim Ho-young's points, you know, the connection between the two governments militarily is there in the CFC headquarters. It's the commander and the deputy commander of the CFC. That is the point of connection between the two militarily. And while the US commander has two other hats as United Nations commander and US forces commander, the scope of the thinking of that commander is different. So the UN commander is thinking about armistice and about the contributions of the international community under the UN auspices in support of Combined Forces Command. And as the US Forces Commander, the commander is thinking about the US interests and US forces specifically and how they interact, and can represent both of those roles to the leadership of the Republic of Korea. But when it comes to planning for war, that is war plans, exercising to create actual readiness to conduct war, when it comes to day-to-day operations, to oversee and be aware of the status of every force on the Korean Peninsula, no matter whose control they are under. When it comes to having standing procedures to rapidly transition from the conditions of armistice into crisis and possibly into war, we're talking the Combined Forces Command. So that's what's happening behind the scenes. It's a machine that's running all the time. And while it does not have troops committed underneath of it, it has the headquarters structure and the subordinate headquarters identified so that very quickly a decision can be made to break glass, if you will, and put these forces together. I use the metaphor of epoxy. It has a hardener and a resin that are kept separate. But when you want to mix something that's going to create a strong bond, you release them to join with one another. It's just like that with the Combined Forces Command. So having the ability and the plans and the control mechanisms to be able to take American resin and South Korean hardener and join them together in a time of crisis to create a strong bond against the enemy forces. That's what the Combined Forces Command is doing every day. My last point will be this, that there was never a time that I was considering some complex circumstance facing us in Korea that I didn't turn to my deputy commander and ask him, what do you think and what does South Korea think? And sometimes the advice would be provided immediately. In other cases, it would be, I'm going to go ask. And each one of us would have our initial discussions about what we thought was necessary and what the combined advice would be to our national leaders. And then we would follow the line of the authorities, to the Joint Chiefs of Staff in both countries, to the Minister of Defense and Secretary of Defense, and sometimes into the national security councils of each country, and in some cases, even to the president, as we had some crises that were warranting decisions by presidents. And we would then get the guidance that would come back, and we would join together again and put together what it is we had just heard from the two countries, and then form a course of action on how we would go forward. So this is a very important mechanism and very unique in how it operates.